The telephone rang. "Oh no," he protested. "Let me alone." The ringing continued, mocking him the way Janza had mocked him. Let it be, like the Beatles sang. Still ringing, and he saw suddenly that he must answer. They didn't want him to answer this time. They wanted to think that he was incapacitated, injured, unable to make it to the phone. Jerry lifted himself from the bed, surprised at his mobility, and made his way through the living room to the phone. "Don't stop ringing now," he said. "Don't stop ringing. I want to show them." "Hello?" Forcing strength into his voice. Silence. "I'm here," he said, shouting the words. Silence again. Then the lewd chuckle and the dial tone. 32. Sweet, sweet in the dark, safe. Dark and safe and quiet. He dared not move. He was afraid that his body would come loose, all his bones spilling out like a building collapsing, like a picket fence clattering apart. A small sound reached his ears, and he realized it was himself, crooning softly, as if he were singing himself a lullaby. Suddenly he missed his mother. Her absence formed tears on his cheeks. He hadn't cried at all from the beating and had lain there on the ground for a few moments after the brief blackout, and then had dragged himself up and made it agonizingly to the locker room at school, walking as if on a tightrope, and one misstep would send him hurtling into depths below. Oblivion. He'd washed himself. Cold water like liquid fingernails, inflaming the scratches on his face. "I won't sell their chocolates, whether they beat me up or not. And I'm not a fairy, not a queer." He had stolen away from the school, not wanting anyone to witness his painful passage down the street to the bus stop. He kept his collar up, like a criminal, like those men in newscasts being herded into court. Funny. Somebody does violence to you, but you're the one who has to hide. As if you're the criminal. He shuffled to the back of the bus, grateful that it wasn't one of the crowded school buses, but a Maverick bus that appeared at odd hours. The bus was full of old people, old women with blue hair and big handbags, and they pretended not to see him, sailing their eyes askew from him as he stalked to the rear of the bus, but their noses wrinkled as they caught the smell of vomit when he passed. Somehow he made it home on the jolting bus, made it to his quiet room where he now sat, sun bleeding now in the sky, bleeding low in the sky and spurting its veins on the den window. Dusk moved in. After a while he took a warm bath, soaking in the water. Then he sat in the dark, quiet, letting himself mend. Not stirring, feeling a dull ache settle in his bones now that the first waves of pain had moved away. The clock struck 6. He was glad that his father was on the evening shift at work until 11. He didn't want his father to see him with these fresh cuts on his face, the bruises. "Make it to the bedroom," he urged himself. "Undress, curl into cool sheets. Tell him I came home sick, must be a virus, 24-hour flu, and keep my face hidden." 33. "Janza, can't you do anything right?" "What the hell are you talking about? By the time we got through with him, he'd been willing to sell 1,000,000 boxes of chocolates." "I mean those kids. I didn't tell you to make it a gangbang." "That was a stroke of genius, Archie. That's what I thought it was. Let him get beat up by a bunch of kids. Psychological. Isn't that what you're always talking about?" "Where'd you get them?" I don't want outsiders involved in this. Some animals from my neighborhood, they beat up their own grandmothers for a quarter. Did you use the queer pitch on him? You were right, Archie. You called it beautiful. That really spaced him out. Hey, Archie, he isn't queer, is he? Of course not. That's why he blew up. If you want to get under a guy's skin, accuse him of being something he isn't. Otherwise, you're only telling him something he knows. The silence on the phone indicated Emil's appreciation of Archie's genius. What's next, Archie? Let's cool it, Emil. I want to keep you in reserve. We've got some other stuff going now. I was just starting to enjoy myself. You'll have other chances, Emil. Hey, Archie. Yes, Emil? How about the picture? Suppose I told you there was no picture, Emil, that there was no film in the camera that day. Wow, that Archie full of surprises, but was he kidding around or telling the truth? I don't know, Archie. Emil, stick with me all the way, and you can't go wrong. We need men like you. Emil swelled with pride. Was Archie talking about the vigils? And was there really no photograph after all? What a relief that would be. You can count on me, Archie. I know that, Emil. But after he'd hung up, Emil thought, Archie, that bastard. Jerry. Oh, Jerry. Yoo-hoo, Jerry. The apartment Jerry and his father occupied was 3 floors above street level, and the voices calling Jerry's name reached him faintly, barely penetrating the closed windows. That distant quality also gave the voices a ghostly resonance, like someone calling from the grave. In fact, he hadn't been certain at first that his name was being called, slouched at the kitchen table, forcing himself to sip Campbell's chicken broth. He heard the voices, and thought they were the sound of kids playing in the street. Then he heard distinctly, Hey, Jerry! What you doing, Jerry? Come on out and play, Jerry! Ghostly voices from the past, recalling when I was a little boy, and the kids in the neighborhood came to the back door after supper, calling him to go out and play. That was in the sweet time, when he and his parents lived together in the house with big backyard and a front lawn his father never got tired of mowing and watering. Hey, Jerry! But these voices calling now were not friendly after supper voices, but nighttime voices, taunting and teasing and threatening. Jerry went into the living room and looked down cautiously, careful not to be seen. The street was deserted except for a couple of parked cars, and still the voices sang. Jerry! Come on out and play, Jerry! A parody of those long echo childhood pleadings. Peering out again, Jerry saw a shooting star in reverse. It split the darkness, and he heard the dull plunk as a stone, not a star at all, hit the wall of the building near the window. Yoo-hoo, Jerry! He squinted at the street below, but the boys were well hidden. Then he saw a spray of light sweeping the trees and shrubs across the street. A pale face flared in the darkness as the ray of the flashlight caught and held it for a moment. The face disappeared in the night. Jerry recognized the plodding gait of the building custodian, who evidently had been drawn out of his basement apartment by his voices. His flashlight swept the street. "Who's there?" he shouted. "I'm gonna get the police." "Bye-bye, Jerry," a voice called. "See you later, Jerry," fading into the dark. The telephone ruptured the night. Jerry groped upward from sleep, reaching for the sound. Instantly awake, he glanced at the alarm clock's luminous face. 2:30. Painfully, his muscles and bones protesting, he lifted himself from the mattress and poised on one elbow to thrust himself from the bed. The ringing persisted, ridiculously loud in the stillness of night. Jerry's feet touched the floor and he padded toward the sound. But his father was already at the phone. He glanced toward Jerry and Jerry drew back into the shadows, keeping his face hidden. "Madmen losing the world," his father muttered, standing there with his hand on the phone. "If you let it ring, they get their kicks. If you answer, they hang up and still get their kicks. And then start all over again." The harassment had taken toll on his father's face. His hair disheveled, purple crescents under his eyes. Take the phone off the hook. Take the phone off the hook, Dad." His father sighed, nodded assent. "That's giving in to them, Jerry." "But what the hell? Who are them, anyway?" His father lifted the receiver, holding it to his ear for a moment, then turned to Jerry. "The same thing. That crazy laugh, and then the dial tone." He placed the receiver on the table. "I'll report it to the telephone company in the morning." Peering in at Jerry, he said, "You okay, Jerry?" "Fine. I'm just fine, Dad." His father rubbed his eyes wearily. "Get some sleep, Jerry. A football player needs his sleep, trying to keep it light." "Right, Dad." Compassion for his father welled in Jerry. Should he tell his father what it was all about? But he didn't want to involve him. His father had given in, taken the receiver off the hook, and that was defeat enough. He didn't want him to risk more. In bed once more, small in the dark, Jerry willed his body to loosen, to relax. After a while, sleep plucked at him with soft fingers, soothing away the ache. But the phone rang in his dreams all night long. '34. Suddenly he was invisible, without body, without structure, a ghost passing transparently through the hours. He had made the discovery on the bus going to school, eyes avoiding his, looking away, kids giving him wide berth, ignoring him as if he wasn't there. And he realized that he really wasn't there, as far as they were concerned. It was as if he were the carrier of a terrible disease, and nobody wanted to become contaminated. And so they rendered him invisible, eliminating him from their presence. All the way to school he sat alone, his wounded cheek pressed against the cool glass of the window. The chill of morning hurried him up the walk to the school entrance. He spotted Tony Santucci. Purely from instinct, Jerry nodded hello. Tony's face was usually a mirror, reflecting back whatever greeted him, a smile for a smile, a frown for a frown. But now he stared at Jerry. Not really stared. Actually, he wasn't looking at Jerry, but through him, as if Jerry were a window, a doorway. And then Tony Santucci fled the scene into the school. Jerry's progress through the corridor was like the parting of the Red Sea. Nobody brushed against him. Guys stepped out of his path, giving him passage as if reacting to some sacred signal. Jerry felt as though he could walk through the wall and emerge untouched on the other side. He opened his locker. The mess was gone. The desecrated poster had been removed and the walls scrubbed clean. The sneakers were gone. The locker had an air of absence, of being unoccupied. He thought, maybe I should look in the mirror, see if I'm still here. But he was still here, all right, his cheeks still stung with pain. Staring at the inside of the locker like looking into an upright coffin, he felt as though someone was trying to obliterate him, remove all traces of his existence, his presence in the school. Or was he becoming paranoid? In the classrooms, the teachers also seemed to be part of the conspiracy. They let their eyes slide over him, looking elsewhere when Jerry tried to catch their attention. Once he waved his hand frantically to answer a question, but the teacher ignored him. And yet it was hard to tell about teachers. They were mysterious. They could sense when something unusual was going on, like today. The kids are giving Renault a freeze, so let's go along with it. Resigning himself to the freeze, Jerry drifted through the day. After a while, he began to enjoy his invisibility. He was able to relax. There was no longer any need to be on his guard or afraid of being attacked. He was tired of being afraid, tired of being intimidated. Between classes, Jerry searched for the Goober but didn't find him. Goober would have established reality once again, planted Jerry solidly in the world once more. But Goober was absent from school, and Jerry figured it was just as well. He didn't want anybody else getting involved in his trouble. It was enough that the phone calls had involved his father. He thought of his father standing at the phone last night, haunted by the persistent ringing. And he thought, I should have sold the chocolates after all. He didn't want his father's universe to be disturbed, and he wanted his own to be put in order again. After the last class that morning, Jerry walked freely down the corridor, headed through the cafeteria, swinging along with the crowd, enjoying his absence of identity. Approaching the stairs, he felt himself pushed from behind, and he pitched forward, off balance. He began to fall, the stairs slanting dangerously before him. Somehow he managed to grab the railing. He held on, pressing his body against the wall. As the stream of guys thought it passed, he heard someone snicker, someone else hiss. He knew he wasn't invisible any longer. Brother Leon entered the office at the moment Brian Cochran finished his final tabulation. The end. The last total of them all. He looked at the teacher, delighted with the timing of his arrival. Brother Leon, it's all over, Brian announced, triumph in his voice. The teacher blinked rapidly, his face like a cash register that wasn't working. Over? The sale. Brian slapped down the sheet of paper. Finished. Done with. Brian watched the information sinking in. Leon took a deep breath and lowered himself into his chair. For an instant, Brian observed relief sweeping the teacher's face, as if a huge burden had been lifted from him. But it was only a brief glimpse. He looked at Brian sharply. Are you sure? He asked. Positive. And listen, Brother Leon, the money, it's amazing. 98% has been turned in. Leon stood up. Let's check the figures, he said. Anger surged through Brian. Couldn't the teacher let down for 1 minute? Couldn't he say good job or thank God or something? Instead, let's check the figures. Leon's rancid breath, didn't he ever eat anything else but bacon for Christ's sakes, filled the air as he stood beside Brian looking over the tabulations. There's only one thing, Brian said, hesitating to bring the subject up. Leon caught the boy stop. What's the matter? He asked, more angry than curious, as if he anticipated an error of Brian's part. It's the freshman, Brian. It's the freshman, Brother Leon. Renault, what about him? Well, he still hasn't sold his chocolates. And it's weird, really weird. What's so weird about it, Cochrane? The boy's obviously a misfit. He tried in a small, ineffectual way to damage the sale, and he succeeded in doing the opposite. The school rallied against him. But it's still weird. Our sales total comes to exactly 19,950 boxes, right on the nose, and that's practically impossible. I mean, there's always some spoilage. Some boxes get lost or stolen. It's impossible to account for every single box. But this comes out right on the dot, with exactly 50 boxes missing. Renault's 50. Renault didn't sell them, then obviously they're not sold, and that's why there are 50 missing boxes, Leon said, his voice low and reasonable, as if Brian were 5 years old. Brian realized that Brother Leon didn't want to see the truth. He was only interested in the results of the sale, knowing that his previous 19,950 boxes had been sold, and he was off the hook. He'd probably be promoted, become headmaster. Brian was glad he wouldn't be here next year, particularly if Leon became permanent headmaster. You see what's important here, Cochrane? Leon asked, assuming his classroom voice. School spirit. We have disproven a law of nature. One rotten apple does not spoil the barrel. Not if we have determination, a noble cause, a spirit of brotherhood. Brian sighed, looking down at his fingers, tuning Leon out, letting the words fall meaninglessly on his ears. He thought of Renault. That strange, stubborn kid. Was Leon right after all? That the school was more important than any one kid? But weren't individuals important too? He thought of Renault standing alone against the school, the vigils, everybody. Ah, the hell with it, Brian thought as Leon's voice droned on sanctimoniously. The sale was over and his job as treasurer was over. He wouldn't be involved with Leon or Archie or even Renault anymore. Thank God for little favors. You got the 50 boxes set aside, Obi? Yes, Archie. Beautiful. Well, what's it all about, Archie? We're having an assembly, Obi, tomorrow night, a special assembly, to report on the chocolate sale at the athletic field. Why the athletic field, Archie? Why not the school? Because this assembly is strictly for the student body, Obi. The brothers are not involved, but everybody else will be there. Everybody? Everybody. Renault? He'll be there, Obi. He'll be there. You're really something else, Archie, you know that? I know that, Obi. Pardon me for asking, Archie. Ask away, Obi. What do you want Renault there for? To give him a chance. A chance to get rid of his chocolates, old buddy. I'm not your old buddy, Archie. I know that, Obi. And how's Renault going to get rid of his chocolates, Archie? He's going to raffle them off. A raffle? A raffle, Obi.